Everybody, welcome again to the Cybersecurity Defense Ecosystem podcast, seminar, whatever you want to call it. Episode number 5, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, as we usually are. But let's proceed. I've got my friend Adam, Nim, and Evgeniy here, and we're going to be talking today about a couple of topics. First thing is we'll talk about shadow IT, and the sister part of that is the shadow AI. So let's kick this off. Who wants to jump in first, my friends?
Right, because shadow IT is a very wide topic. So where do we start? Do we start about people installing their own apps? Do we start from people buying their own hardware, connecting from the devices they cannot connect, opening the cloud instance they're not supposed to be doing, or maybe creating LLMs they're not supposed to be doing? But if I want maybe try to pinpoint what it is, I think it's something that people want to do, and the IT people don't let them do it. So they ask for permission and they find their own way. So if I have a credit card, I can just go and do it. And if we expand this, then we basically find our own way to do what we need without approvals. This could be by design because people don't want them to do it, and they find a way, or maybe because the security is blind and don't want to adapt to people's needs.
Well, that's why people use shadow IT, right? But is it a bad thing for real? I mean, from an employee perspective, got a job to do. I can use this app to make my life and job easier, better, generate more productivity. Why shouldn't I do this? I mean, are they even thinking about the cybersecurity impact? What do you tell? Maybe let's start there. What do you tell an employee why you should not ever use shadow IT?
You know what, Julian, the problem is we as IT leaders and MSP leaders think telling somebody absolutely no, that's not a supported app, that's not a supported platform, that's not a supported cloud, is a form of security where we're restricting what they use to a plane that we control, right? And it's the typical misalignment between IT and the business, right? There's a reason and there's a purpose why the user is asking for it. And as tech leaders, we have to identify what it is, how to solve for it, and how to support it within our management plane. In this day and age, saying no is not a form of security or a form of being an IT leader. It's how do you find a way to a yes, but a secure yes.
How would you say it then? How would you answer that question to someone?
Think about that. This is how I will define this. And I'm going to piggyback on what Neem is saying is you teenage your daughter or son come and ask you to go to a party.
Say no.
Then figure out how they somehow being there because they're going to find a way if they want to do it. So you need, and this is the question I'll tell the IT management when somebody come and tell you, I really want to do XYZ. If you just tell them no, think what your kids will do if you're asking just no, without explanation, without guidance, without finding different ways. No, honey, you cannot go because it's dangerous, because it's a different city. Or maybe we'll find a way. Why do you want to go? Explain me what they need. Explain me what the usage need, how it's going to be more proactive, productive. Maybe I'll drive you, maybe I'll pick you up. So there's a variety of ways to do it, but just blindly become the no guy will not going to work because it's very easy to just take a credit card, go to GCP, go to Azure, AWS, go to a fancy SaaS application, swipe it, go. And guess what? The finance team will even approve it because you're using a corporate card.
Yeah, the way I look at this, and I think that's a good analogy, Evgeny, but also like I look at it from a requirements perspective. What is the user trying to accomplish? And I think Nim, you had a very good point. Our job in as IT and cyber is not to say be the party of no all the time. Sometimes it does need to be no for a particular app, but that doesn't mean that we can't support the user. I go back and and my team, we say, look, what are you trying to accomplish? There probably are 5 alternatives to that particular app that they're using. Not always, but a lot of times there are. And so, we just try and train the users and the business to approach it from a requirement standpoint. What do you need to do and how can we support that in a secure manner?
That's great points. It's like don't say no, first of all, because they're going to find a way anyway. Plus, they'll think you're a fool, man. They'll say, like, what does this person know, right? They're just going to do it anyway. So don't say no. answer with a what do you want? What are you trying to achieve? And figure out that, and then maybe work it out from there, back it up a bit.
I just want to understand, is part of the show we always have to agree with his name? Agree with his name or not? Because we always agree with one names.
You
No?
should agree
No,
with
don't
me.
agree with me. I'm actually wrong most of the time.
So how about that? What Aaron was saying. I coming to you with a problem, I wanted to do that. I think there is a more awareness need to be done about third-party validation. We say before we tell you yes or no, we're not going to tell you anything. We understand the needs. We understand what you're trying to achieve. We understand what this particular app, it is an app. We'll get access to the information before we go there. And it's in my mind leads to the topic we spoke before the recording about LLMs and AI. Because in theory, maybe LLM is not harmful by itself. But the moment you start putting data there, or it has access to the data, now the problem becomes.
So let's just double click on the one of the regular shadow IT, then we'll dig into the AI part. So as an employee, I say, okay, so why then? So my question to the IT person says, I got a way to see if this could work, or there maybe is a better way, or whatever that response is. Why? Explain to me in easy terms how IT can tell an employee what they're doing by just getting whatever additional software.
How would they even know? What if I didn't go ask? What if I know they're going to say no? So there's the first, somebody need to go and ask. Second, potentially to have a way to discover there is shadow IT software and then talk. So there's a variety of different angles here.
So let's just start with the first one. Why the hell shouldn't I download my app that I want to use in my business to help me? What explain to me in a simple terms the risk that I can bring the company towards if I did this?
I'll start from the beginning of we have IT policies, cyber policies that you as an employee signed, where we describe and tell you which application you're supposed or not supposed to be using. And anything outside of this list, you need to have an approval. Just very simple.
Why?
Why? Because we are the ones that validating and testing what is applicable to the company and not because we don't want to introduce Trojan horses or problems to our company.
Yeah, and just to follow on to that, it's all about the data, right? So whatever IT, so the official approved IT systems and platforms are that way for a reason, and that is because our cybersecurity teams and IT teams, we have validated that they have proper controls on that information. All the things we talk about, encryption, multi-factor, physical security, all that stuff, data security, privacy. So the moment you start putting company data outside of that fence, we'll call it, and that fence is loose, that's when you can start to have problems. That's why, because we don't want to have leaks or breaches of that information just because someone's able to do that. And then there are various ways to discover if these folks are using these things like DNS filtering and other things like that.
So for sure, discovery would be the great way to know if they're not telling you what they're using, right? So I think that the first thing is like trying to put a policy in place where you can explain to the employees why this is a bad thing, right? And maybe instead of just explaining why it's a bad thing, maybe it's a cool thing to say, hey, employees, is there anything else that you'd like to use to improve your job, right? That we can explore. Is that another alternative?
The best line of defense is to have an accepting culture where you want employees to not feel like you're going to say no, even though you find a way to justify why A might be better than B. You want them to be able to raise it to you and come to you and say, hey, I want to use this and this is why. I think it's a good idea. But Evgeny's point, those technical controls that prevent it, like if I go download a tool and I go to use it on my computer, if the browser blocks me or the machine says you can't install it, those things are important. And for us to be able to detect it is important. But you need to create a culture. And that's why it's not just security awareness training on don't click on a link, but it's more security awareness training is bringing broad awareness to acceptable behavior and how you are the front line of defense for the company, and sort of creating that ownership in security. It's culture first, and that's how you bring it around to. I'm not saying no, I'm saying I'm going to help you, but this is how we're going to get it done together.
Yeah, a bit of a mindset shift. I love that the way you put it. You are the front line of the defense of the company that you work in, and whatever you do could actually jeopardize that. So, what are some of the things that the company can do to ensure they reduce that shadow IT? And maybe before we answer that question, is there like what do you see when you do some scans for companies? Are you seeing like a lot? Are you seeing a little bit? Like what
Oh,
percentage are you seeing the shadow
so
IT stuff?
let's talk about scans because scans can be different, and I wonder each opinion because Adam mentioned DNS, but this is only one part. This could be also your web gateway. This could be also your SASE solution. This is part that we can scan on your traffic. Other part, this could be, can I scan your email? Can I actually scan email, understand where do you sign up? What about cloud? Like, what do you guys think, Adam, name
Yeah,
about cloud shadow IT? Yeah.
yeah, you're right. There are multiple things that you have to look at um, to see, what's going on. So there's DNS filtering, there's the network traffic, there's what's going in cloud, email, endpoint. Um, and cloud's a big word because it could be your 365, your Google, it could be a whole bunch of different things. Um, so it's a combination of things. But getting back to what Nim was saying is that, it has to be a combination of um, security awareness training in several different types and technical controls. Users in environments that we work in, users are not allowed to install anything. We will not provide our services in an environment where a user can install something. It's
So
a risk.
installation
We
is
will not.
banned
We will
completely.
not accept that. So users, and we feel strongly that's a very important control. Now there are
This metrics,
except there,
Adam.
hold on. There are exceptions because you have developers and you have other types of users that do need to do those things. But even in those cases, we still have awareness of what's being installed. And we have tooling to tell us what's being installed, and there's still some level of approvals that are needed. Uh, but I do agree also, it's a cultural thing, just like the analogy with your kids. If you tell them, if you take a hard line, that's not a recipe for success. You have to have open communication about things.
The balancing act between cybersecurity and humans. Um, okay, well, what else should we talk about then about shadow IT? Is it you discover these things, you find out we've got like 50% of the products running in a network is shadow IT, and then you lose a gasket and you go screaming to all the employees and like what do you do? How do you repair that when you've discovered that you've
So
got
we
like a
need
bunch?
to understand the maturity level of the company. What
Mm.
Adam was describing, that will not allow people to install anything, it's a level of maturity. Because I can say no, but if I don't have a way to enforce this, I can say no as much as I want. So the way I will describe the maturity level is first awareness. I need to have a document because if I didn't tell you you cannot install it, then you say like, what do you want from me? I didn't know. So I need to have a written policy explaining why I cannot install and what you need to do about it. So one level. Second level, I need a way for monitoring this, and they say that it's a different way to do it. Third level potential could be I need a way for you to tell you, to educate you. Hey, by the way, you couldn't install this. Maybe I cannot prevent this, but I could educate you. Because one part, I cannot install XYZ on my laptop, maybe easier with certain endpoint solutions. Different part, you cannot go and subscribe to a tool like Canva, for example, which is just a web-based tool, or Adobe or something else that I cannot really do anything with my endpoint solution. I need a different solution. So maybe I need an advisory part. Okay, you cannot do that. And then I need an enforcement part that will do it as well. So there's a different levels, and I'm wondering what do you guys think? What else exists?
Yeah, that also there's two other things. You need an easy way for people to ask for these requirements, like a ticket or something that's documented so you can actually, document the review and the reasons and everything. The other thing I thought about earlier is you mentioned the credit cards and finance. I think mature organizations go at this from the purse strings, right? So they make sure that they only certain people can buy certain things. That's another one.
Okay. So you've got some shadow IT out there, and you've discovered, there's 100 shadow IT stuff happening right now. As the IT department, do you just shut it all down automatically, or do you send out a note to everyone? Like, what's that step? What's the next step once you've discovered this?
You want to take that?
The a famous one that is shadow IT driven that a lot of we've run into this quite a few times is unsanctioned conference call assistance. So you join a meeting and all of a sudden you've got Adams, Otter,
Oh my God. Yeah.
this, NIMS, that. And it's like, as many people on the call, there's many unsanctioned assistants. And with a little bit of education, people start to learn that the data that's recorded in this meeting is now hosted in a public cloud that is not regulated. And what does that mean? Like, bottom line is, will you take responsibility for the information that you breached? Because you personally signed up for this on your personal credit card and it was not authorized by the company. Oh, I just wanted a note taker. I don't care what I used. You guys have something I recommend? That's where the conversation goes to. And so I think a lot of people don't realize the connection, and that's a failure in culture of what does it mean to have your data in certain spots outside the company and what the implications are. So for me, it's always been an education vector. It's you're going to do it. Let me sit down and understand what your intention is, and we'll find a way to get to where you need to be in something that's approved and allowed to use. And
That's an important point. When we do news media coverage, right, we always see folks drop on there. Sometimes they just put their note taker, right? And now we had to implement a policy, 0 note takers coming on the platform, right? And the reality is, I mean, of course, you can't stop someone from having a recording device, on their desk, right? So it's sort of like a little bit crazier because they have these devices, right? You can tap on a little button there, it can record and it can transcribe. So it doesn't even have to show up on the screen that they're note taking, right? It is a challenge. So that's a very big one because if you want to talk about people having meetings within each other with Zoom and whatever, and then they're having various note takers. I mean, there goes all the data, right? What else should we talk about with shadow IT that should scare the bejesus out of us?
Maybe not scared the bejesus. I think it's awareness. Think about this in light what you can do. And if you're watching this as an employee, as a user, think about what you're doing. Think about if there's a better way to achieve what you need. Maybe you need to go to IT and say, guys, I need to do XYZ. You're not enabling me. What do I need to do that you will enable me that I can better do my job instead of hiding what you're doing?
And again, put it in terms of requirements about, what are you trying to accomplish? As a user, you may think this is the greatest tool since sliced bread, but you're probably not thinking about security. So again, just think about it. And I think that the note takers are a good example because there's tons of them out there.
Yeah, too
And
many.
so, hey, they want to, and they're great. They save a lot of time. They catch things that maybe we don't. You just need to understand what the requirement is, and then we can together solve that.
So there's a lot of potential for shadow IT, of course. And if there was one thing that we think most humans are using right now is this AI thing, right? So, and brings its own challenges, right, to the company. And last time we touched a little bit about poisoned AI and so on. What's happening right now with AI and how bad is it, from an employee perspective? Because I think employer perspective, I think most employees are sort of playing with it right now, whether at home or at the office.
Well, where we start? We can talk about asset management on the
Should the
AI.
company should the company just come out and says, here is our AI solution and policy, and this is the only one you should be using, and this is how you should use it. They should not allow people to just use AI wherever they want to use.
Policy, 100%. The written policy to explain the usage and what cannot. Say this is our AI. Most companies don't even know because they don't have a sanctioned AI, because they don't know what's good and bad. So instead of doing something, they're not doing anything. Third, we just spoke about this. If I don't know how to discover it, if I'm not mature enough, I'm not going to know you use ChatGPT or you use something else with Gemini. So and I have no way to enforce this as well, to block this as well, because I don't have the correct URL filtering, SASE, browser extension, DNS security to do this part. Third, what if I have developers that creating different LLMs for my company inside? Then it's a different problem.
Yeah, and I think you gotta start with the policy, and again, this it gets back to the shadow IT thing, but it's specific to AI and large language models and the data, right? So what and I think it's an opportunity for the company to lean forward and say what is our AI policy? What is our AI strategy? If they don't have one, they should be thinking. Everybody has to be thinking about that. And so, how does our strategy align with the overall business and our AI policy? And I agree. It's good. I think from what we've seen, we generally will have these in the policy. These are our approved AI solutions. If you need something else, then you need to come to us. And then we have various mechanisms to enforce that. But again, like Evgeny said, there are plenty of companies that don't have that capability to discover.
So there's there are thousands of AI apps now, right? And everybody's whatever they're using. So the challenge is as a company, if you don't have a solid AI policy and a strategy, right? Expect the Wild West, right? Your employee's going to use whatever, because if you don't lead that, they're going to do whatever they want to do. So if there was ever one reason why companies should stop what they're doing and figure out what their AI playbook is because you want to have everybody do whatever they want, right? So that's definitely where a starting point. I didn't even know if there are tools to can actually control what you
There's many
use
tools.
in AI, and they are.
Yeah.
Well, you start off with network and DNS filtering, and there's browser extensions and endpoint tools as well. So if you have those, literally, like you're only going to be allowed to go to certain ones. But it's not perfect. I mean, that's the
There are
challenge.
workarounds, right?
Yeah.
But so there are ways to control it. So shadow IT, shadow AI, and what is the problem with AI now? I know, of course, we talk about the data when we move into AI, where we shouldn't be putting data into it, et cetera, et cetera. We got to be careful what kind of data we put there. But a lot of people are taking their messaging, copying it, pasting it into AI, and go, can you make me look like superstar, writer? And in the AI, in the messaging, of course, has a lot of important content. It could even have information about a customer. It could be pricing. It could be whatever. How should they use it? How do you use AI if you've got information that maybe is in an email and you want to write better? Because that seems to be where most humans are using right now.
Well,
how should you be allowed to use AI is the bigger question, right?
Okay.
Like instead of limiting it to basic functionality, I think the approach, the mindset a lot of people are taking is thinking, what AI should we be using? But the inverse is the actual question to ask, in my opinion, is what data should we be allowing to be used within AI? Because if you take the approach as an enterprise where you're controlling and taking responsibility for your data, so you've identified your crown jewels, you've labeled, classified, and applied a retention policy, You've established proper security groups of what can see, who can see what data based on data type classification and labeling. And you've also isolated certain information from ever being in contact with AI. Now, the rest of the information is knowledge worker information that you can stand to gain some efficiency from. So how do we do this better? How do we do that better? How do we write a better email? How do, go and find me this policy that says, where's my acceptable AI? Yeah, sure, AI can go and do that. But if you take responsibility for your data, you organize it in such a way, which LLM you are allowing your information to be trained on becomes less of a risk because you've got controls in place to prevent unsanctioned information from flowing into those systems. That's my thoughts on that.
An example, literally a couple of days ago before this aired, we have a newer sliver of domain of tools, not domains, that doing AI firewalling. Basically, they are the next generation of web gateways, SASE solutions, the proxy, whatever you want to call them, that monitor what you upload and what you do. So Cato Networks, we're not promoting any vendors, but just an example from what's happening, acquired a company called IAM Security. And IAM Security is focusing on preventing people to upload sensitive information there. Just the beginning, one of the first one. We're going to see more companies. Actually, Palo Alto earlier this year also acquired a company in LLM security as well that help you to discover what you have in your company and also prevent people to upload information. So it's just the beginning. We're probably going to be seeing the traditional vendors that are doing network security, proxying and DLPing, doubling down on what you can or cannot do to help you there.
So there's a thing that, the LLMs say, okay, you can have your own private instance. You can then allow the private instance to ingest all your email stuff, your files, your documents, and so on, which obviously is including a lot of confidential information. First of all, should anyone do this? Should anyone upload all their stuff into a private?
Well, let me just take that first. So there's many flavors of what you're talking about. And whenever we look at, we get asked all the time to review different AI solutions and AI platforms. And so you have to look very carefully at the privacy policies, at their security controls, how they're actually set up. And what does private really mean? Does that mean like what Evgeniy was talking about earlier, where you're building LLMs and these things within your environment itself, and that's to me that's private. That's the only thing that's really private is if we control it completely. But however, there are some pretty good solutions that I would feel comfortable putting confidential information in. But you need to have a security professional to review these things to make sure they really are, and I don't want to use the term private, but at least isolated.
They say private, but
And back to your question, should they put everything in there? I'm not sure. I think probably not everything.
Because the thing asks you, right? Do you want me to ingest your entire life? In not so many words, right? And you've got it's supposed to be your own instance. But I guess the message here is your own instance doesn't mean that the information is privately forever in your domain, right? There is accessibility to the LLMs, right?
It depends. And each one is different.
So which one would you say right now? I mean, I didn't even know which one you'd recommend, but which LLMs you think is offering the most secure private instance for a regular human to say, look, I would love to use AI and ingest my stuff into it and leverage it. Is there such a thing today?
I mean, what organizations that have highly sensitive data that can't afford a public using a hosted public LLM solution are doing is building your own organizational cortex. So if you build your own organizational cortex within, your Microsoft environment using, Azure services, that is limited to just your organization. It's not available anywhere outside, and it is purely the data that you're choosing to build. And creating that cortex within your organization means the neural networks and assumptions and learning that is happening within that cortex are limited to only your organization and what you allow it. Now, there's a layer below that, which requires you to make sure you've got the governance in place that now that you've got this big thinking brain, what parts of these thoughts are allowed to be seen by whom within the company. And
Right.
that's another level of security and segregation of duty and all that nice stuff, but it can be architected completely independent of anything that's out there.
So unless you've got
However, the
something like
cost is
that,
on you too. But the cost is on you too at that point, because all the SUs and compute power are for your organization. So you're paying for that.
so that's the right way to do it. I'm not sure most companies will do it that way. So let's say you're consulting to a company about how they should use AI, and they have 50 employees, and they want to use AI for various things. What do? If they don't want to have their own private instance, like Nim just explained, is there a way to use the LLMs that's out there in a safer, more private way?
There's multiple ways to do that. And I would start with, everybody's got email and collaboration, right? So you're either Google or Microsoft for the most part, unless you're, I don't know, some other
Weird.
entities generally, right?
On mail.
So, yeah. So there are options within those environments already. Obviously, there's Copilot. Obviously, there's Gemini. That you still have to be careful, and what you need to look out for in those cases. But that's where I would start. And then what you have to look out for is, what Nim was describing earlier about data classification and segmenting the data, and all those things are not often done properly. And it's also the who can access what. That's very often those things are not done properly. And so what you end up with is, I saw this in a company recently. I logged into the web interface of, the email and collaboration, and Copilot's right there, happily, asking me, if I need help. So I go in and start asking questions. Hey, show me contracts data, show me finance data, show me HR data. Not in those in much more specific terms. And I was able to get all kinds of stuff. And they're like, well, wait a minute. I didn't realize all that was there. Well, you didn't lock it down. So it just makes it easier for the average user to access something they really didn't know they had access to before. So, but if you start and clean that stuff up, that's how we tell people to do it. I would start with those large language models, the AI that's already in your environment.
So a lot of HR people using it, right, for lots of reasons, and there's so many use cases. But you start putting your AR notes in there, right, your HR notes in there, and someone queries it and says, "Hey, tell me what the CEO's salary is," and tweet it out to everybody, right? Or I want to know what my the guy or girl to my left and right is their salary is, because I want to know if I'm being underpaid or something like that, right? I mean, you could start a whole crazy revolution by making sure the wrong data, like sensitive information like this. Should any of this even be on LLMs? I mean, should we only be using it to help us write better? Should we be using it to, even ingesting contracts, or as like Nim said, listening into your meetings, right? This is like, what is not sensitive? Like, it could all be sensitive, right?
This is where we're going to data classification, completely different topic that wasn't invented yesterday, wasn't invented a long time ago. We need to classify data. We need to have a data security program, DLP, data leakage later on, and classify the documents. What is sensitive, what's not sensitive, what's public, what's restricted, what's secure. This is what needs to be goes there. But if we don't have all this, I will just use some kind of logic. If I want to upload the documents there and there is names that are proprietary to my company or to me, I may change the names. So if I need to do something with the document and has a customer information, when I use LLM, I will going to change all the customer information to a customer or to some kind of name. I will make sure there is no proprietary information to this customer there. So at least some basic information, or if I need to create an offering or something where I want to use the LLMs, I don't want to provide some connection hooks that will explain what it is. This is, at least for me, basic hygiene that I do for myself.
So you got to go through, do the work, blank it out, maybe change the name, find a new place, that
Anonymize,
type of stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, then you got to worry about metadata though if you're gonna upload a document. So
Boy, I'll tell you, the digger you deep down, the further you go down this rabbit hole, the more you realize that it brings up more questions than it brings answers. If you were me wrapping this up here, I think this topic is big enough to kind of wrap it up with just the shadow IT and shadow AI. When you look at businesses today, there is probably no business that is not experiencing some level of shadow IT and shadow AI, right? And the downsides of this, the upsides, of course, is probably better productivity, happier employees because they're being able to do their jobs better, and so on and so forth. The downside is you could have some significant data leak that could come back and bite, privacy issues with compliance and regulations. So that's one issue. And you've got the cybersecurity breach issue, right? That if you're using things that is not sanctioned or hardened, if you will, in cybersecurity, then you're opening up another attack vector to the hackers to get into the company. And at some point, if you are that, let's say, the culprit, for lack of a better word, it's going to ultimately point back to you, right? Somebody's going to figure it out during forensics that it was NIM's use of ABC product that got us there, right? And so there's a price to pay, I believe, there, because if we don't start putting some kind of I don't want to say a price, but a responsibility on it, right? Then what happens if I do something wrong? Like what's my punishment, right? Get me fired? You see what I mean? There's got to be some kind of a loop here where everybody has to be a stakeholder in this. So knowing that that's sort of like the roughly reality, right? Wrap this up with each of you just saying, if I were you, right, as a business, here is what I do to allow my employees to not leverage IT, but bring it into the fold, but also to use AI properly and so on. What would you do? Who wants to kick it off first?
I'll go first.
All right.
Okay, go ahead, Adam. Go.
You were first. Go ahead.
Okay. What I would say is if I were you, I would learn one thing from all of this today is that you need to prioritize data governance to protect your data. And two, understand what the business is asking for so you can be a facilitative IT and security team. Newsflash, you may think that having unmanaged devices is okay, but if you're allowing your users to use Apple Mail and they've got an iPhone, guess what? Apple AI and Siri have already indexed your mail data in Apple Mail. So is that what you wanted? Probably not. So it is time to take AI and shadow IT seriously and become a facilitative IT leader.
Yikes. Okay.
I would say start off with, again, like I said earlier, what's your strategy? What's your policy? And those two should align, and listen to your employees. I don't know. It depends on the size of the company. You said 50 people. I think that's small enough. You could have a town hall or, go around, in smaller groups, maybe the managers, but, and then, so find out what they need. And then, get the visibility you need. You shouldn't be in a situation as a business owner or as a leader in a business where you don't know what the employees are doing. So the visibility from the network perspective and the endpoint perspective, and the controls perspective.
So at least run a scan to figure out what the hell, how bad it is, right? How much shadow IT and how much shadow AI you have.
Not a scan, but it's put the tooling in place to validate that stuff.
You know me, man. I simplify everything to the simplest denominator, man. Evgeniy, what would you recommend? If I were you, this is what I would do. Run.
I think I think the guys covered what it is. This is good information. I don't want to lose people with even more stuff. I think it's sufficient right now.
Okay. So look, moral of this story is shadow IT and shadow AI is here. I would maybe say it's here to stay. The challenge is what are you going to do about it, right? You could ignore it until something bad happens, but that's just how can I say, leaving it up to the wind, if you will, right? You never know what's going to happen, but you need to knock this down. So it's time you get serious about it. It's accelerating too as well. I got a feeling that people are sort of like caring much less about what it means for the company and more about what it means for them. I think we're in this world where the employees are saying, look, I need someone to help me and my job, right? And really and truly, I'm only here at this company for 2 to 3 years, maybe. And what does it really matter to me? So I think there's a disconnect there. And if people have this me attitude, then how do you change that, right? That's a bigger question than we could ever answer. But there are challenges, and this is just the shadow IT part of it, right? We haven't talked about all the other umpteen things in cybersecurity, and that's what we try to do, right? So, yeah, go ahead.
Next month.
Yeah, next month we'll tackle some more things, and again, we have enough content to last us for the next decade, I believe. We'll try to hit maybe some pen testing and automation pen testing next time, and versus human pen testing and why that matters, if it matters. And we'll talk a little bit more as well about incident response and are you really prepared for that breach when it does happen? And so, yeah, we'll try to dig it in and give you some insights best we can. So stay tuned until episode 6, I believe, will be next time. Thank you, Adam, Nim, and Evgeniy. It's always a pleasure, man. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheerio.
Take care.